ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्तस्वामिनिति नामिनि नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणि निर्विशेषाय शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणि जयो श्रीकृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरभक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुद्धीरेत् नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवति उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी. So today we'll be seeing Bhishma Stuti. Okay, so until last week we saw Kunti Maharani's prayers, right? No, Kunti Maharani's prayers only, right? Last week we saw, isn't it?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yeah. So this week it will be Bhishma Pitama's Stuti. Okay. So as usual, right? I'll just give you a background of so where this comes in. Okay. So this comes in first canto. Yeah. So ninth chapter is Bhishma's prayers. Yeah. So in here, right? So this is a place, so wherein we saw, right, until last week, what happened is Krishna was about to leave, right, the Kurukshetra because the battle was finished, and then Kunti Maharani was actually, when they were doing the send off, then Kunti Maharani began her prayers, right? Suppose that, so when she said that, and then Yudhishthira Maharaj comes in and then says that you stay for with us for some more time, yeah. So then the Lord says, okay, she'll extend for some more days, yeah. So maybe 15 days or 20 days. He said, okay, I'll extend my stay at Kurukshetra. Okay. So after this, right, what happens is Yudhishthira is feeling bad, right? King Yudhishthira is feeling bad, so to take the throne, right? So he's feeling that due to him, right, the whole battle happened, yeah, and due to this Raj Sinhasan, right. So for that, all these fightings happened. Women were killed, say the husbands were killed, and then women are widows, so children are fatherless. So he is actually lamenting like anything. So he's saying that. So what is the use of getting such Rajya by killings, by having this massacre? Yeah? And he was feeling that what would not happen if the Rodhana would have also ruled. So that's fine. So he would have ruled, and then so I should not have been the cause for all these deaths. And then he feels that for all these things, I am responsible, right? And then he says that, say, I'll be going to Narkaloka because I have done these many wrong things and all. He's feeling very guilty. Eh? So and then there are a lot of sages, right? So because at that time, right, so all the kings used to have the brahmanas, right, so as the uh, governing body, or say they were the ones who used to give consultation to the king, so whenever he is in an awkward situation, right. So therein even Vyasadeva was there. Okay, so all started pacifying him, saying that no, it's nothing wrong in it. So you did the dharma yuddha, right? And then so you actually did the fighting on the basis of dharma, right? And then there is nothing wrong in it. So they were all giving their own version, saying that so a kshatriya has to fight for injustice, and then there is no harm if say we fight So as per the rules and regulations, and then to actually wipe out the adharmics, right? So they were giving their own version. So there are a lot of sages, Vyasadev, everyone tried to console them, but they didn't listen. Even so, Lord Krishna also tried. Okay, and then so he was still lamenting. Okay, and then so Krishna says that we have Bhishma Pitama, so let's consult him. So whatever he says, you listen, because um, these Pandavas were fatherless, right? So from their young age, and then they had a lot of say intimate relationship with Bhishma Dev. They were all their grandfathers, right? So they were having good relations with them, and then they were very quite quite close. So, and then Bhishma Pitama was the grandsire, right? So he was the oldest of all, right? And then so all these things, right, has happened. Suta Goswami says that all these things happened due to Krishna. So Krishna actually was not allowing uh, Yudhishthir Maharaj to get consolidated. So he's actually not allowing Yudhishthir Maharaj to calm down. Yeah. So because see, Yudhishthir Maharaj, if somebody tells, so many people are telling, right, he could have easily understood the situation. But Lord Krishna is playing this Leela, right? So wherein he's not allowing Yudhishthir Maharaj to pacify. And then the whole idea behind this was Bhishmadev is waiting for Lord Krishna, right? So now Lord Krishna wanted a reason. And the other thing is, Lord Krishna wanted to glorify Bhishmadev, right? So all these things has to happen, right? And if the Lord would have left to Dwarka, right, all these things will not happen, right? So this was the scene behind it, and then we all know, right? So Bhishma Pitama was lying on the bed of arrows, right? So then Krishna says that the next day we'll go and visit Bhishma Pitama, who's lying on the bed of arrows, yeah? And then we'll consult him. So, and he asks, see, the Lord Krishna says that each one of them, right, should actually dress up like a king, okay, with all the jewelries, commandos, and then the helmets, all golden, shining, all silk cloths. He said that everyone should dress up very nicely, okay, because it was the dream, or always Bhishma Pitama wanted that Pandava should rule in, right? And then, so the Lord Krishna actually wanted to show him that the rulers are nothing but the Pandavas. Okay. So to make him happy, right? So at the time of uh, death, right? So all these things were planned. Okay. And then they actually, the next day, they travel to the place in the battlefield where Bhishma Dev is lying on the bed of arrows, right? And then, so what happens is Bhishma Dev, by looking them, right? So because, and then Bhishma Dev had one boon from his father, right? That's called Ichamruti. So he can live the body on his own will. So he had that boon, yeah. And then he was waiting for the Uttarayan time. Yeah? So this basically the time of January, right? In our times during the Sankranti, right? So what happens is we come to from Dakshinayana to Uttarayana, right? So at that time, so he was waiting for that moment to come. But it's not for him, okay? So he was always a pure devotee. But the other thing is, Uttarayana has two things. One is Krishna is also known as an Uttarayana, right? Because he protected Uttara, right? So, and so basically for mystics, right? In Bhagavad Gita, we have that the mystics actually wait for that particular time, and it has been said that whoever leaves his body during that time, right, so he never comes back. Okay. So now he's lying, and then by looking at them, right, he's very happy. So Bhishma Dev, I'm looking at you, this Maharaj and all, right, he's so happy. And he actually, because Bhishma Dev is lying on the bed of arrows, right, so to see this, right, so he invited with his mind, right, he has invited all the devatas and all the say rishi munis and everyone, right? So all of them were present, and then he was actually inviting them, and then with his mind, right, so he was actually offering obeisances and everything, because he's in such a situation that he can't do all those things, right, but he was looking at the place and circumstances, right, he was offering all the things, so he was receiving them and everything, so all these things happened. And then what happens is Bhishma Dev actually starts um, the conversation with the Pandavas and all, right? So, and then the Pandavas ask a lot of questions. So he gives them about how to rule and all, right? Because he is he is the oldest grandsire, right? And then he knows all these things very well. So he was giving information about Varna, Ashrama, Dharma and all, yeah. And then, so there are a couple of verses we'll pick in, yeah. So, so this is one of the verses, yeah. So wherein, say, Bhishma Pitama, right? He says that to the Pandavas, right? He says that Aho kastam aho anyayam yadyuyam dharmanandanaha jivutvam narahata klishtam vipradharma achyutta ashraya. Okay. So aho, oh, custom, the terrible sufferings. Aho, oh, anyayam, right? What terrible injustice. Yet, because Yuyam, all of you good souls, Dharmanandana, sons of religious personified, is nothing but sons of Pandu. Jivutam, to remain alive, right? Na, never. Arahata, deserve. Klistam, suffering. Vipra, Brahmanas, Dharma, piety. Achyuta, God, Ashraya, being protected by. So Bhishma Dev said, oh, what terrible sufferings and what terrible injustices you good souls suffer for being the sons of religion personified. You did not deserve to remain alive under those tribulations, yet you were protected by the Brahmanas, God, and religion. Okay. Mataji, can you read this purport, please?
Yes, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Maharaja Yudhishthira was disturbed due to the great massacre in the Battle of Kurukshetra. Bhishma Deva could understand this, and therefore he spoke first of the terrible sufferings of Maharaja Yudhishthir. He was put into difficulty by injustice only, and the Battle of Kurukshetra was fought just to counteract this injustice. Therefore, he should not regret the great massacre. He wanted to point out particularly that they were always protected by the Brahmanas, the Lord, and religious principles. As long as they were protected by these three important items, there was no cause of disappointment. Thus, Bhishma Deva encouraged Maharaja Yudhishthir to dissipate his despondency as long as a person is fully in cooperation with the wishes of the Lord, guided by the bona fide Brahmanas and Vaishnavas, and strictly following religious principles. One has no cause for despondency. However, trying the circumstances of life, Bhishma Deva, as one of the authorities in the line, wanted to impress this point upon the Pandavas. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji. So in here, right, so Bhishma Dev actually recaps what all terrible sufferings the Pandavas went through, right? So he's saying that Aho custom, right? And Aho Anyayam. So what kind of injustice has happened to him? Yeah. And then he says that if at all it had been any other ordinary living beings, right? So they would have died, right? So they would not have lived. Okay. They cannot be alive. with so much of tribulations, right? So Pandavas, but they were actually, they could survive because in all these peculiar situations, and then so in so much of agony, right? So they could only l- live because they had always the sangha of Vipras, nothing but Brahmanas. They were always listening to the Brahmanas, right? Vipra and Dharma. They were doing piety, and they had the greatest shelter is not is nothing but of Achyuta. Achyuta is nothing but Lord Krishna. So they were always protected by the Lord, right? So if you look in, right, as we were discussing in, right, so there are a lot of pains which were they were going through, right? So every moment they had something or the other, right? So but they were actually having so much of patience, right? So even those turbulence, right? So say, think of the Durvasa Muni incident only, right? So what happened? So they would have gotten a bigger curse, right? So but what happened? So the law at the end, if you look, right? So at the beginning, it feels like it's impossible, right? So but at the end, the Lord comes and then He settles down everything, right? So look at anything, right? Even say when the incident happened, right, of Draupadi also, right? So then also, so it was a situation. So because on the other side, it was a very powerful man, right? And then so even the Lord chipped in there also, right? So it's always right. It looks like things are impossible and nothing could be done, right? But they were always dependent on Lord, right? And they were always doing the right thing, right? So even there were a lot of troubles, right? So they never did any wrong things, right? So they always went on dharma, right? So that's the reason they were always protected by Lord Krishna. And in every episode, right, if you see, right, they had a greater advantage, and then they were getting closer to the Lord, right? So similarly, right, in our life also, there will be a lot of things, hiccups, right? Because material world, right? Nothing is sweet, right? So it's not always the sweet rice which we eat in, right? So there will be some portion of sand particles in it, right? So yeah, so we'll have to manage it. Yeah. So it's not that always we'll be always happy. So it's that so now we have taken Krishna consciousness, and then we'll not have any of our pains, right? So from tomorrow morning, so nothing inauspicious will happen. Everything will be wonderful. So it doesn't happen. Though the Lord, one good thing is we will be under the protection of the Lord. Yeah, but it again depends upon how we are, right? So at times when we get a little bit snagness, right? So, okay, chalta hai, then the Lord will release that portion of chalta hai to us so that we again remember the Lord properly. Okay. So that's the way, right? So everywhere there will be little bit of pain, right? So, and then we'll have to actually inculcate that pain and then say make it sweeter, right? If we pass through that, right, that's nothing but Krishna's test, right? So how we are going to pass it, right? So the main exam is our death, right? So all these things are our preparations, right? If at all we are missing our buses here itself, right? So we will not go to that. Eh? So there will be challenges. We'll have to overcome them and then move ahead. Yeah. And then how do we move ahead? If you look in, right, in this case also, they were actually guided by Vipras. They were having Dharma and Achyuta Ashraya. So for us, Vipras are nothing but our devotees, Sadhu Sangha, right? And Dharma. So we should always be on the side of justice, right? So we should always do, we should not do wrong things, right? So it's not that in the morning we start doing the japa, in the afternoon there is a lunch hosted by someone, and then we start going it and taking non-veg and all, right? So it doesn't help. So we should balance everything, yeah. This is very good shloka, yeah. So you all can read this through, and then so we can talk for any time, but we have other things to cover. So I'll stop there, yeah. So this is from 12th onwards, right? And then the actually Bhishmadev actually says that how his daughter-in-law was suffering, and then there were so many great suffering she has to go through, right? And then all this conversation goes on, yeah. So and Yudhishthira Maharaj, Nakul, Sahdev, so all of them they actually asks uh, so many questions, yeah. So he's trying to say Yudhishthira Maharaj is actually asking all his doubts, right? So what is caste order, individual qualifications, and then he described the charity, right? And the occupational duties of different statuses of life, yeah. And then after a longer discussion, right? So because he had so many things, right? And then he even sung Vishnu Sahasra. Okay. So Vishnu Sahasram was sung by Lord Bhishma, so for the Lord by Bhishma Devan. Yeah. And then after having all these question and answers, right? So now he says that after different subjects, right? When spoke about different subjects, now he's actually saying that from 32 sloka, right? He starts concentrating on the Lord, right? Because he knows that this is the time when I'm going to leave my body, right? So even Bhishma Dev, if you look in this episode, right, Bhishma Dev is actually showing us the path. So what should be our mentality when we are going when are leaving the body, right? Bhishma Dev is a Mahajan, right? So we cannot imitate or we cannot be in his shadow also. So we are not at all considered in that category at all. But he's actually showing us the path, right? So he's laying us the ideal leader, right? So if you look in it, all these episodes, right, is for one. So how should be the mind when one leaves a body, right? So he's at the deathbed, right? And then see what all things he's doing. Yeah, so he's glorifying the Lord, right? And then he looks at the Lord and he leaves the body. So that's how, if at all, each one of us can do that, right? So that will be like the greatest thing. Okay. So here we'll recite couple of verses and then we'll read the translations for most of them, right? Because there are 10 verses. So we cannot read all the things. The translation and all, it will take time. So we'll read the important 2 or 3 shlokas and then translations we'll read in. Okay. So here Sri Bhishma Vacha Itimater Upakalpita Vitsrana Bhagavati Satvata Pungave Vibhumuni Swasukham Upagate Kvachit Viharatam Prakritim Upayeshu Yadbhava Pravaha. So Sri Bhishma Vacha. Sri Bhishma said, Iti, thus, Mati, thinking, feeling, and willing. Upakalpita, invested, Vitsrana, free from all sense desires. Bhagavati, onto the personality of Godhead. Satavata Pungave, onto the leader of the devotees. Vibhumni, onto the great. Swasukham, self satisfied. Upagate, onto he who has attained it. Kvachit, sometimes. Viharatam, of the transcendental pleasure. Prakritim, in the material world. Upayeshu, do accept it. Yat bhava, from whom the creation. Pravaha, is made and annihilated. Bhishmadev said, let me now invest my thinking, feeling, and willing, yeah, which were so long engaged in different subjects and occupational duties. In the all powerful Lord Krishna, he is always self satisfied, but sometimes, being the leader of the devotees, he enjoys transcendental pleasure by descending to the material world, although from him only the material world is created. So he's saying that let me invest all my energy now, right? So which were so long engaged in different subject and occupational duties, because he was having so many duties, right? So those he was taking care, right? So even so of the kingdom and all, right? So that's the reason, right? And we all know, right? He had promised his father that Kuru dynasty, right? So he'll always protect the Kuru dynasty. So hence he was always helping them. So in whatever circumstances, right? So he said that he will always protect the dynasty. So that's the thing wherein Bhishmadev was always with the Kauravas, yeah. So and then he says that let me put all my energy. So because all this time, right, so I was doing different things, right? Because he was a statesman, right? He used to look at the kingdom affairs and all, right? So because when all these people, Kauravas and Pandavas were young, right? And then Dhritarashtra was blind, so he was he was the one who was actually running whole the kingdom and all. So he had lot of occupational duties. So he said that enough. Now also I've spoken a lot. So now let me focus on Lord Sri Krishna. Praveen Prabhu, can you please read this purport?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Because Bhishmadev was a statesman, the head of the Kuru dynasty, a great general and a leader of Kshatriyas, his mind was strewn over so many subjects, and his thinking, feeling, and willing were engaged in different matters. Now, in order to achieve pure devotional service, he wanted to invest all powers of thinking, feeling, and willing entirely in the Supreme Being. Lord Krishna, he is described herein as the leader of the devotees and all powerful. Although Lord Krishna is the original personality of Godhead, he himself descends to earth to bestow upon his pure devotees the boon of devotional service. He descends sometimes as Lord Krishna as he is, and sometimes as Lord Chaitanya. Both are leaders of the pure devotees. Pure devotees of the Lord have no desire other than the service of the Lord, and therefore they are called Sattvata. The Lord is the chief among such Sattvatas. Bhishmadev therefore had no other desires. Unless one is purified from all sorts of material desires, the Lord does not become one's leader. Desires cannot be wiped out, but they have only to be purified. It is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 10.10 by the Lord Himself that He gives His instruction from within the heart of a pure devotee who is constantly engaged in the service of the Lord. Such instruction is given not for any material purpose, but only for going back home, back to Godhead. For the ordinary man who wants to lord it over material nature, the Lord only sanctions and becomes a witness of activities, but He never gives the non devotee instructions for going back to Godhead. That is the difference in dealings by the Lord with different living beings, both the devotee and the non devotee. He is leader of all the living beings, as the king of the state rules both the prisoners and the free citizens. But his dealings, uh, but his dealings are different in terms of devotee and non-devotee. Non-devotees never care to take any instruction from the Lord, and the Lord is silent in their case. Although he witnesses all their activities and awards them the necessary results, good or bad, the devotees are above this material goodness and badness. They are progressive on the path of transcendence, and therefore they have no desire for anything material. The devotee also knows Sri Krishna is the original Narayana, because Lord Sri Krishna, by his plenary portion, appears as the Karanadakshi Vishnu, the original source of all material creation. The Lord also desires the association of his pure devotees, and for them only the Lord descends to the earth and enlivens them. The God appears out of his own will. He is not forced by the conditions of material nature. He is therefore described here as the Vibhu or the Almighty, for he is never conditioned by the laws of material nature. Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. So here there are a lot of things which are being touched. Yeah. So if you look in, right, so this is all about the Lord, right? So in here, even one of the Bhagavad Gita shlokas is also been picked up, right? And then it's more of we whatever we spoke, right? He was actually a general in Kuru dynasty and all, right? And the other thing is, the Lord actually is equal to both the devotees and non-devotees, but for the pure devotees, right? So who do not have any desires, right? So for them, so he actually gets bound. Okay, so let's look at the example of Arjuna. Right? So Arjuna was a pure devotee, right? So Lord Krishna agreed to become his charioteer, right? So do we know what a charioteer is, right? So charioteer sits behind the warrior, right? And he has to be warrior, right? So when he's fighting, right, he'll actually kick the charioteer to move. So if he kicks left, then the chariot has to move left. If he kicks the right, then it has to move right. So and then he has to take care of the horses and all, right? So there are so many things. So the Lord agrees for that also, right? So there are three kinds, right? So we know, right? Nastik, Astik, and Bhaktas, right? Nastiks are the ones who do not believe the Lord himself, right? So even the Lord comes, right? They are actually blind, like Duryodhana, right? So they'll not have any, so they don't care for the Lord, right? So in that case, right? So Lord will never actually show them any mercy, or no, he'll not reveal them. Okay. Even he reveals, right? He'll not understand. So Krishna actually revealed once because he went as a peace messenger, right? And then he revealed to Duryodhana his power. But Duryodhana said that he's a magician. So good luck, right? And so what else we can do? Similarly, so there are astic, right? So what happens is there is some demand, right? So like the devatas and all, right? So they usually they worship, but they have something in their mind. Okay. So basically pious people, but they always have something to be fulfilled. They have some desires. Yeah? So they do something and then they feel that okay, so they'll get something. Okay, so it's always that there is something which is going at the back end. Okay, and then bhaktas they're totally dependent. So like Prahlad Maharaj, or you take the example of anyone, right? Ambrish Maharaj and all, right? So you see, Ambrish Maharaj didn't move an inch when Durvasa Muni actually sent the demon to kill him, right? So they are totally dependent. So those are bhakta categories. For them, right, the Lord will actually come and then he'll do whatever he needs. And right. So if you see in Prahlad's case, right, when Hiranyakashipu said that is your God present in this particular pillar, so that's something impossible, right? But to keep the promise of the devotee, right, the Lord comes in out of the pillar, right? So that's the thing which is being told here, right? So for the pure devotees, the Lord always reciprocates and then he agrees to take the role also. So he likes to do that pastimes with the devotees, right? And then he says that if at all we put an effort, right? So those who are constantly devoted and serving to the Lord with love, right? So the Lord actually gives them the understanding by which they can go back to him, right? So this is 10.10, yeah. Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yenamam upayantite. So I will give, right? So the real intelligence, right? So that will be given by the Lord, right? So if at all we are actually trying, okay, yeah. So we'll see the next one. Yeah, so this is also an important one. Yeah, so wherein Bhishma Pitama is actually say he's remembering the Lord. Yeah, so he's glorifying. Yeah, so this thing is if we can memorize this. Yeah, so त्रिभुवनकमनं तमलवर्णं रविकरगौरवर अम्बरं दधाने वपुर अलककुलवृतान् अम्बुजं विजयसखेरतिरस्तु मे अन्यवद्य. So here, right, Bhishma Pitama is actually thinking of the Lord, and then he's actually praying. These are all wonderful prayers. Tribhuvana, three status of planetary systems. Kamanam, the most desirable. Tamala Varnam, bluish like the Tamala tree. Ravikara, sunrise. Gaura, golden color. Varambaram, glittering dress. Dadhane, one who wears. Vapu, body. Alaka Kula Avatra, covered with the paintings of sandalwood pulp. Ananambajam, face like a lotus. Vijaya Sakhe, onto the friend of Arjuna. Rathiyastu, may attraction be reposed upon him. Me, my. Anyavadya, without desire for purative results. Sri Krishna is the intimate friend of Arjuna. He has appeared on this earth in his transcendental body, which resembles the bluish color of the Tamala tree. His body attracts everyone in the three planetary systems, upper, middle, and lower. May his glittering yellow dress and his lotus face covered with the painting of sandalwood pulp be the object of my attraction, and I may not desire furtive results. So, here he's saying, he's giving the description of the Lord. You see, S- he was always seeing the Lord in the battlefield, and then he was always seeing, right? And then at the time of death, he's remembering these all things. He says that Vijaya Sakhir, right? So he's nothing but he's addressing Arjuna's friend, right? And the Lord always likes to be described like that, right? So, like the ones which we had, right? Krishnaya Vasudevaya, Devaki Nandanaya cha, Nanda Gopakumaraya, Govindaya Namo Nama, right? So everywhere, right? Either Nanda Gopa, right? Devaki Nandana. So if you actually call the Lord and address with all these devotees, right? He feels more happy. Yeah. So rather than calling his name directly, right? So it's like we are remembering the devotee with the Lord, right? So we are glorifying the devotee. So the Lord feels much more pleasure in those things. Yeah. So he's saying that who is the intimate friend and what is his color? He says that bluish like Tamala tree, right? And see the vastra which is wearing is of golden color, yellowish, right? And the pulp, she's having sandalwood pulp on his face, right? And his face is like a lotus, right? He's saying that let me concentrate on all those things. And then when the sun rays are falling, right? Say on the glittering dress, right? So he's actually remembering all those things. Yeah. So he's getting that picture. Yeah. So he's giving. So here also, so he's giving the description of the Lord, how the Lord looks, right? He's having a bluish complexion, yellow color dress. He has pulp, it's the sandalwood pulp, and then the reflection, the sun rays, and everything. He's already effulgent, right? So the Lord is very effulgent. So I think we can't describe this. Yeah. So our words are less. So he's actually remembering those things. Yeah. Mataji, you can read this. And then he says that here, so all three planetary systems, right? So the upper planetary, middle, and lower, right? All are waiting to see this face. Eh? So this personality, right? So everyone wants to actually have some, want to spend some time with him. So they want to see him face to face, right? So that's the desire of everyone, right? And Mataji, go ahead, Mataji. Purport.
Yes, Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. When Sri Krishna, by his own internal pleasure, appears on earth, he does so by the agency of his internal potency. The attractive features of his transcendental body are desired in all the three worlds, namely the upper, middle, and lower planetary systems. Nowhere in the universe are there such beautiful bodily features as those of Lord Krishna. Therefore, his transcendental body has nothing to do with anything materially created. Arjuna is described here as the conqueror, and Krishna is described as his intimate friend. Bhishmadeva, on his bed of arrows after the battle of Kurukshetra, is remembering the particular dress of Lord Krishna which he put on as the driver of Arjuna's chariot. While fighting was going on between Arjuna and Bhishma, Bhishma's attraction was drawn by the glittering dress of Krishna, and indirectly he admired his so called enemy Arjuna for possessing the Lord as his friend. Arjuna was always a conqueror because the Lord was his friend. Bhishmadeva takes this opportunity to address the Lord as Vijaya Sakhe, friend of Arjuna, because the Lord is pleased when he is addressed conjointly with his devotees who are related with him in different transcendental humors. While Krishna was a charioteer of Arjuna, sun rays glittered on the dress of the Lord, and the beautiful hue created by the reflection of such rays was never forgotten by Bhishmadeva. As a great fighter, he was relishing the relation of Krishna in his chivalrous humor. Transcendental relation with the Lord in any one of the different rasas, humors, is relishable by the respective devotees in the highest ecstasy. Less intelligent mundaners who want to make a show of being transcendently related with the Lord artificially jump at once to the relation of conjugal love, imitating the damsels of Rajdhama. Such a cheap relation with the Lord exhibits only the base mentality of the mundaner, because one who has relished conjugal humor with the Lord cannot be attached to the worldly conjugal rasa, which is condemned even by mundane ethics. The eternal relation of a particular soul with the Lord is evolved. A genuine relation of the living being with the Supreme Lord can take any form out of the five principal rasas, and it does not make any difference in the transcendental degree to the genuine devotee. Bhishmadeva is a concrete example of this, and it should be carefully observed how the great general is transcendently related with the Lord. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Mataji. So whatever we spoke, right? And then he say, and the other thing is the rasas, right? So there are different rasas which we have with the Lord. So not we, but the pure devotees have in. Okay. So it could be there are five base ones, right? So say like Dasya, Sakya, Vatsalya, right? And then there are 14 other rasas also, right? So wherein the Lord has, right? So like one of them is Veera rasa, Asya rasa, and all those things are there. Okay. And then among them, right? So Bhishma Pitama had the Virya rasa or the chivalrous humor. So he was in that rasa with the Lord. Yeah. So the Lord, even because in Vaikuntha, right, nobody would like to do any fighting with the Lord, right? So even if the Lord asks, no one will actually would like to fight with him, right? Hence, whenever the Lord wants, right, so then he sends his own devotees as his enemies, and so like Jai Vijay and all, right? So, and then he fights with them. Right? Okay. Similarly, in here, right? So Bhishma Pitama had Veera Rasa. Okay, so it's nothing but chivalrous fight. So, and the other thing is the Arjuna, though he was fighting in the battle, right? Most of the time, right, Bhishma Dev enjoyed the beauty of the Lord because he was actually looking face to face to the Lord. Because Arjuna was actually standing behind the Lord, right? So he couldn't see the face and all of the Lord, right? So all these things were visible to Bhishma Pitama, right? And then he was enjoying all throughout the war and everything, right? He was enjoying and he was relishing them, right? You see the hue on his face, the color of his dress and everything, right? He was actually enjoying like anything, right? So in this, right? again the extension, yeah, on the battlefield where Sri Krishna attended Arjuna out of friendship, the flowing hair of Lord Krishna turned ashen due to the dust raised by the hooves of the horses. And because of his labor, beads of sweat wetted his face. All the decoration intensified the wounds dealt by my sharp arrows were enjoyed by him. Let my mind thus go on to Lord Krishna. So he's actually adding more stuff. Yeah. So what happens is in here, right? So in the battlefield, right? So because of the dust and all, right? So his hair got gray, and he was having some say because he was running, he was riding the chariot with ropes and there's the chabuk, right? So he was having some sweat wetted his face, and then so all these things. He says that it's more pleasure seeking, and then um, even when Bhishma Pitama was actually throwing the arrows, right? So few of them actually hit Lord Krishna. Okay, and then so there was some say wounds which were visible, right? And then he was saying that they were looking more beautiful, right? Because he's in Veera Rasa, right? And then the Lord also for his pastime, right? For the Leela, right? Because Kshatriya means you would like to see some blood, okay? Because Lord's body is transcendental, right? So all these arrows will do nothing to him, but only for the pastime, right? So there was some blood spilling out, or so there was some wounds created, so which actually um, so Bhishma Pitama was enjoying all those things. Yeah? So and then it's been written, right? In Veera Rasa, right? All these arrows which were thrown to Lord Krishna, those were like the flowers, right? So the rose flowers which are offered to the Lord, right? So in Veera Rasa, these all arrows are nothing but like the rose flowers which are thrown at the Lord. Yeah. So we'll move, right? So and then here, right? So the other examples are also being given, right? So wherein so he was actually the Lord was actually obeying the instructions of his friend or his command, right? So it's like when Arjuna said, right? So take me into the battlefield, right? Sener Madhyo, right? So Ratham Sthapape, he'll say, right? In, the first chapter, so he says that take me to the battlefield. Right? Then the Lord actually takes the instructions of the devotee, and he takes there, and then he guides him, and then he says that look at the army. So you have got your great father, grandfathers. He is the commander in chief. He explains everything, and then now you fight. And then Arjuna actually breaks there, right? He says that I can't fight, and then he enlightens him, he motivates him to actually fight, right? He remembers all those things now, okay? And then here I'd like to touch one thing, yeah. So yeah, even here, right, when Arjuna was seemingly polluted by ignorance, right? Kashmalam, Kuthastha, you have got this Kashmalam, right? So he's asked, right, in second chapter, the Lord asks him, where did you get this behavior, right? So this doesn't suit for an Kshatriya, right? And then Arjuna was seemingly polluted by ignorance. Upon observing the soldiers and commanders before him on the battlefield, Lord eradicated his ignorance by delivering transcendental knowledge is nothing but Bhagavad Gita, right? Yeah. So this is one more important shloka. Yeah? So Swanigamam apayhaya matra pratigyam ratam adhikartam अवप्लतो रथस्तः धृतरथचरणो अभ्यक्ष चलद्गुर् हरियेव हन्तुम् इभं गतो उत्तरः. So this is an important shloka. Yeah? So Swanigamam. own truthfulness, apahaya, for nullifying mata pratignyam, my own promise, ratam, factual, adi, more, kartum, for doing it, avaplutaha, getting down, ratha sataha, from the chariot, dhrita, taking up, ratha charana, is nothing but the chariot wheel, abhayate, abhayayat, went hurriedly, chaladuga, trampling the earth, harihi, lion, eva, like hantum, to kill, ibham, elephant, gata, leaving side, uttarai, covering the upper part, covering cloth. Translation: fulfilling my vow and sacrificing his own promise, he got down from the chariot, took up its wheel, and ran towards me hurriedly, just as a lion goes to kill an elephant. He even dropped his outer garment on the way. So this I'll tell you the explanation. Yeah. So what happens is, when the battlefield of Kurukshetra is happening, right? So Duryodhana, as the days are passing by, right? So Duryodhana actually is feeling insecure, because, but the way the Pandavas are actually conquering, right? And then so they are defeating all these soldiers and the commanders, right? So he is a diplomat, right? And then he knew that, okay, so things are not working. So he went to Lord Bhishma, right? And then he says that, Bhishma Pitama, you are actually, you are still inclined to Pandavas, then you are not fighting the way you should fight in. Okay. He says that you're still having some kind of attraction towards the Pandavas. So you're not actually showing your full strength, and then you're not violently fighting. So, and then he says that, for you only I have holded Karna, or else Karna would go and then defeat them, and all this nonsense he says to Bhishmadev, right? So, and then Bhishmadev, being a Kshatriya, right? So when someone challenges all these things, right? So they take it up as a challenge. So he did purposefully, right? And then Bhishmadev says that, okay, look, he does, because he's a great general, and then he had a lot of siddhis also. So he said that, okay, so he took 5 arrows, right? And then um, he did some prayers and all, and then so those 5 arrows were lighting like anything. They had a lot of effulgence. He said that, keep, these are the 5 arrows using which I'm going to kill all the Pandavas, right? Tomorrow morning, I'll be killing all the Pandavas. Then the next day, either I will kill the Pandavas, or Lord Krishna has to actually, uh, he said that he has to break his vow, because he promised that he'll not lift a weapon, right? So either of the things should happen. Okay. So when he said this, so Duryodhana was very happy. Oh, okay, it's done now. Right, done and dusted. Now what will happen is, tomorrow Bhishma Pitama will kill the Pandavas, and then rest of the armies, whatever is left over, so we'll manage. Okay. And then you see, diplomacy has got an end, right? This guy doesn't have that also. So he says that Bhishma Pitama, so he brings a satin cloth, and then he says that, Bhishma Pitama, you give me those arrows, I'll keep it very securely with me, and then I'll give you. As if Bhishma Pitama cannot keep them securely, right? So this guy takes in, Duryodhana picks it up. So we know, right? So Lord is there in everyone's heart as Paramatma. See, he understood this plan. Then what happens is, at the night time, Lord Krishna goes and wakes up Arjuna. Okay. So, and then he says that, you go to Duryodhana and get 5 arrows. So what happened is, Duryodhana actually, so once, he was actually fighting with the Gandharvas. Okay. And then he was actually completely trapped and then so he was about to be killed. So Arjuna actually went and protected him. Okay. So at that time, Duryodhana said that I'll give you one more, you can ask me at any time. Okay. And then so he used that, Arjuna. So Arjuna quite didn't understand what is all this happening. So Krishna said, you go get the arrows, you tell him that there was a vow. So even in the battlefield, right? So when the enemy comes in, right? So these are all the principles which they were fighting in, right? It's not the coward way of fighting, right? And in those days, right, you see the leaders were always present behind the army, right? It's not like these days, right? So you see, say all our chiefs, right? Starting from the all the chiefs, right? So what they do, or the heads, they actually monitor the situations using visuals, right? So nobody goes into the battlefield, right? And then so they don't stay with the soldiers, they don't fight, nothing, right? But in those days, right, those generals were leading up front. Okay. So and then they were only fighting until the evening. Yeah. Once the conch shell is blown for that day, when the sun sets, it's done. No more fighting. So when Arjuna goes, Duryodhana receives him very well. Right? It's not that he doesn't receive him. And then as he had given a vow, right? He gives all the 5 arrows to Arjuna. Arjuna brings them back. Next day morning, Bhishma says, where are my 5 arrows? Duryodhana says that Arjuna has taken. Then Bhishma understood that, okay, this is all the protection which Lord Krishna wants to give to the Pandavas. So next day what happens is Bhishmadev, as he has promised, right? He was actually shooting the arrows so violently that he broke the chariot of Arjuna, and then he brought down Arjuna onto the ground also. And those, so all the things, right? All the things were cut, and so he was about to kill Arjuna. So Bhishmadev showed his full potency with so much of arrows, so much of power, right? So Arjuna couldn't withstand. So he was almost about to be killed. Okay. At that instance, right, the Lord actually feels, so he wanted to protect Arjuna now, right? And then to protect the Arjuna, right? So he actually breaks his vow, because he had said, right, that he'll not actually pick up the weapon, right? But looking at the situation, right? So Krishna actually didn't have any weapons, although in his hand. So he actually pulled the chariot wheel, right? And then he was actually rushing towards Bhishma Dev. Yeah. So with the trump and all, right? So the agony which he had, right? So the earth started trembling and all, right? And then his footsteps were hitting like everything was shattering. And then he was charging towards Bhishma Pitama runningly, right? And so in the course of that, right? So the upper portion we wear an garment, right? So that fell down. And then on the other side, right, you'll be seeing um, the Lord, the Arjuna actually stops him, says that, you said that you should not, you said you'll not pick the weapon, and then this is not the right thing which you're doing, right? So you leave him, say, I'll fight. See, he actually is saying, Krishna, you should not do this. But Krishna says that, so Krishna is not listening to him also, right? So this is the beautiful picture, right? So where is that picture? Yeah, this is the one. So we all know, right? So this is the scene you look in. So where Here, if you see, there is somewhere, yeah, here it is Arjuna. Yeah, so he's pleading him, right? And then his Vastra is moving on, and then he's coming with the chariot wheel charging towards Bhishma Pitama, right? So by the time this things comes in, right? So by the time all these things are happening, right? The And then Bhishma Pitama is more happy. So he's also living, and then he's saying that, come on, say, I would be. He's also becoming. He's leaving all his bows and arrows. He's saying that, I'm ready to be killed by you. Right. By then, what happens is the conch shell of the evening is blown, and then for that day, the things are. So for that day, right? The It's a break for the war. The next day it will happen. So why I described all these things is here, right? Bhishma Pitama is glorifying the Lord, right? So because see, Bhishma Pitama was a brahmachari, and then he took a vow of killing the um, Pandavas, right? To keep his vow, right? The Lord actually broke his own vow, right? So the Lord is ready to break his vow for the devotees, okay? Because he didn't want to lose the charismatic thing which Lord Bhishmadev had in, right? So he didn't want to lose a speck of it, right? So he said that whatever Bhishma Pitama had said, right? So that word has to withstand, right? For that, the Lord said that it's okay. I can break my vow, but not my pure devotee, right? That's the thing. So he's remembering that, and then he goes on into tears, yeah, so saying that how grateful the Lord is, yeah? And then he says, now he has come to in front of me, and then how fortunate I am to see him, right? So yeah, so all these things happen, and then so he says that the Lord actually has given salvation to the opponents, right? So he has shortened the life of the opponents, right? So those who have fought in the battle and then who have died saying Lord Krishna, right? So they were all liberated. He says that he gives so the salvation to the others also. And then, right? So now he says that at the point of death, let my ultimate attraction be be to Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead. I concentrate my mind upon the chariot driver of Arjuna. So he's actually again saying that Parthasarathi, right, who stood with a whip in his right hand, right, and a bridal rope in his left, who was careful. Who was very careful to give protection to Arjuna's chariot by all means. Those who saw him on the battlefield of Kurukshetra attained the original form of death. So then he says that let my mind be fixed upon Lord Krishna, whose motions and smiles of love attracted the damsels of gopis. The damsels imitated the characteristics, movements of the Lord. So he's actually glorifying the gopis, so because who were the greatest devotees. And then he remembers the Rajasuya Yagna, which Yudhishthira Maharaj was doing, right? And then how he was actually glorified, and then so how the Lord was worshipped by all the exalted devotees. So he's remembering everything. And then he says that now I meditate with full concentration upon to the Lord Sri Krishna, now present before me, because now I have transcended the misconception of duality in regard to his presence in everyone's heart. Even in the hearts of the mental speculator, he is in everyone's heart. The sun may be perceived differently, but the sun is one. So with this, Lord Bhishmadev leaves his body. So looking at, he glorifies the Lord. So his mind is fully filled with the Lord's presence, thoughts, and everything. So his body is not so fit, but his mind, soul, everything is onto the Lord. And then he seeing the Lord, and he left. body. So that's the greatness of Bhishma Pitama, right? So it's very wonderful actually to talk about these personalities, right? So Bhagavatam is full of these things only. So whatever we can cover, we'll cover it. Others will all have to read in. Okay. So we are done for today. Anything anyone wants to ask?
Yeah, Prabhuji, actually, I had one question, not related to today's discussion, but in the past, like we had discussed the Dashavtaras. So
Um,
stories or all what we already discussed in the past,
mm,
was it actually happening in this earth? Because there are several other universes, right? So like God created, Krishna ji created many universes. So are
yeah.
these happening in our earth, this present bhumi that we are in, or is it happening in different earths that we are
S-
listening
s-
to?
So all these leelas happen simultaneously in all the places, Mataji. Okay. And then, so one thing we know, right? Say Bharat Bhumi, right? So Bharat Bhumi is the place where the Lord chose. So we know that Lord Krishna was born in India only. So we are lucky in one way, right? So being in India, right? So it's a pious land. So wherein we have so much of rishis and all. So even the Badrika ash from which we are talking, right? It's still there, Mataji. So it's there in the near the Himalayas where Vyasadeva wrote.
Mm.
So and then he was staying, right, and then where the sages of Naimisharanya were there. So all these things, these places still exist, and Dwaraka is still there. So we have Barsana. So Barsana is still there, where Radha Rani was born, right?
Mhm.
So we have Vrindavan. Uh, but the thing is, even if you look at Lord Chaitanya's pastimes, are all done in Jagannath Puri, right? Yes. But the only problem is we see everything materially, Mataji. So we should, even if we go to that place, right? So unless we have the mercy, um, so we are not such an elevated persons, right? So because all these things were there, right? That's the reason Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had asked all his Goswamis to go and then excavate everything, right? In Vrindavan, because by then, right, everything was lost.
Mhm.
So nobody knew. So in Vrindavan, right? So we have all these places, right? So even Radha Kund was not was covered when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came, and then he actually identified that place. Yeah. Similarly, there are say other Goswamis also, right? So they went and then they built the Vrindavan, so which we are seeing in, right? So different places, right? So all these things were established. So
Mhm.
all these things happened here, and then the other things is God Leelas happen everywhere, Mataji. So simultaneously they happen.
Okay, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Okay, so we'll wind up for today's class. Thank you for your association. Vancha kalpatarobhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnebhyo namo namo. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Hare.
Krishna Prabhuji, can I ask one question, small
Go ahead,
question?
Prabhu. Sorry, I left you. Oh, go ahead.
You had said that when Lord Krishna had picked up the chariot wheel,
Prabhu.
it was the evening conch shell which was blown, so he stopped using the chariot wheel.
Yeah,
Yes, I'd read it was that when you picked the chariot wheel, and if you observe in that picture which you had shown,
yeah,
Arjuna holding on to the legs of Lord Shri
yeah,
Krishna,
yeah. Hmm.
Arjuna reminded him of his vow. He said, "You have taken a vow
Yeah,
that you will
yeah.
not." And
Yes, Prabhu.
when he reminded him of his vow, then he dropped his chariot wheel. Is that correct?
No, no, but actually, so the Arjuna reminding him and then pleading him was going on, Prabhu. But the thing is, Krishna actually to show the pastime, right? He was charging back. But the actual thing why it got stopped was due to the conch shell. So you can actually read it in the purport also. So it is there in the purport, Prabhu. So and this chapter itself, the one which we are discussing, right? So that shloka itself, it is there.
Right, because I was telling from a Mahabharata which I had read.
Okay. But no, in Bhagavatam, the shloka which we were referring, right? If you read that, it's been said that the evening it was the conch shell, so which actually stopped all these episodes to move ahead.
Okay, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.